Welcome back to another week of the Pioneers Weekly Football Preview, where we take a look at all of the this weekend's high school, college, and professional games on the schedule. We're going to start things off in the high school ranks, where Chippewa Hills will travel to Reed City in a big game for the Warriors and for the Coyotes in terms of the CSAA conference standings go. Looking at this game, Bob, can you talk a little bit about what Chippewa Hills is going to need to do coming off a very tough loss to Big Rapids on homecoming to get things back on track? And who do you got winning this one this week?
For Chippewa Hills to win this game, they have to play better on defense. They can't allow Reed City to get those long sustained drives that eat up 8-9 minutes of the clock. They have to play well on defense, and then on the other side, they have to get some points on the board because Reed City will get their points. I like Reed City in this game, and I think they'll win with a late touchdown, something like 28-14.
This Chippewa Hills Warriors team is an explosive team on the offensive side. Just like Bob said, they've got to fix up the little holes that they have in their defense. This week it's going to be a tough game for them as they go to Reed City. I don't see the Warriors pulling it out, and that's unfortunate. But after last week's hang-up with Big Rapids, I see the Coyotes coming out on top by 2 scores.
Chippewa Hills is going to try to get the ball in the hands of its playmakers again this week. I think they're going to really try to open things up in the passing game against Reed City and really test that secondary. I think they'll have some success, but the Chippewa Hills, when they've had issues, it's been with turning the ball over, and there's more risk of that in the passing game. I see Reed City winning by about 10 points in this one. Looking at our next high school game on the schedule for this weekend, Big Rapids coming off its biggest win in a few years on Friday against Chippewa Hills to improve to 4-1 on the year. They're taking on Morley Stanwood on Friday as part of the homecoming celebration for Big Rapids. Bob, can you think of a game that is more significant to this Big Rapids team in recent years than this win over Chippewa Hills? And what does this mean for this team going forward? And do you see them continuing that success this weekend against the Mohawks?
You're correct that was one of the bigger wins in Big Rapids' recent history, going back 2, 3, 4 years. For them, they have to keep it going. They can't afford a letdown. Morley Stanwood's starting to play a little better, 2 in a row. I don't see Morley making it 3 in a row. Big Rapids is riding high. They got 5 wins coming up here. They can smell the playoffs. Still in the CSAA hunt. I like Big Rapids winning this one going away.
Brandon, after some early season struggles, Morley Stanwood's won their last 2 games. Do you see that having any carryover this weekend and have them, do the Mohawks have any shot against the Cardinals team that is obviously one of the top teams in the CSAA this season?
We've seen a more competitive Morley Stanwood team the last couple weeks. The errors that they started off with, the bonehead plays, they're fixing those, and we're starting to see the results of the dedication and the work on that show on the field. But this week it's going to be a little bit harder against Big Rapids, who I think in their heart they're going to be cheering a little bit for Chip Hills to knock off Reed City, but they're going to be focusing more on their game with Morley Stanwood and bringing home a homecoming win.
Yeah, Morley Stanwood has made some gains in the last couple weeks. They've changed some things up offensively to have a little bit more firepower on the offensive end, but I don't think it's going to be enough this weekend. I think Big Rapids wins by a couple touchdowns in this one. Moving on to the college ranks now, Ferris State in action again this weekend. They hit the road for 2 weekends in a row against Saginaw Valley this weekend, followed by their annual showdown with Grand Valley. The Bulldogs are 3-1 on the year after a win over Walsh on Saturday at Top Taggart Field. And they're looking to improve 4-1 against the Saginaw Valley State team that is ranked nationally and has had some good wins already this season. Bob, do you look for Ferris State to continue their winning ways against Saginaw Valley State team, and what do you see as the keys for the Bulldogs to do that?
I think we're going to have to see near perfection on the defensive side of the ball for Ferris. Their offense is as formidable as any in the GLIAC. Obviously, you have the top 2 with Grand Valley and Saginaw Valley always sticking it to them, but This is going to take a team effort on defense, and I think it's going to be a lot of work for Ferris, and it's just going to be too much for them to handle. I see Saginaw Valley winning by 2 scores.
For Ferris State to have any chance this weekend, they have to win the time of possession battle. They got to move the sticks, get first downs, and score some points. I don't see them doing that consistently enough to get a win, but I think this is going to be a very competitive game. I think this is a game that's decided by less than 7 points.
Brandon, in the last couple weeks, we've seen Ferris State's offense emerge, and then this past weekend, the defense stepped up. What do you think it's going to take for the Bulldogs to get a win this weekend, and do you see them pulling it off against Saginaw Valley on the road?
I think we're going to have to see near perfection on the defensive side of the ball for Ferris. Their offense is as formidable as any in the GLIAC. Obviously, you have the top 2 with Grand Valley and Saginaw Valley always sticking it to them, but this is going to take a team effort on defense, and I think it's going to be a lot of work for Ferris, and it's just going to be too much for them to handle. I see Saginaw Valley winning by 2 scores.
Well, Ferris State returns many of the same players from a team a season ago that nearly upset Saginaw Valley on the road. They hit the road again with many of these same guys again, but the biggest issue that Ferris is facing right now are some of the injuries that they have, particularly on the offensive line. They had 3 new starters last weekend because they're banged up at that position, as well as at defensive back. I just see Ferris as being on the mend a little bit too much, relying on some guys who haven't gotten as much experience. I think that's going to play a big role, and I see Saginaw Valley State winning by a couple scores in this one as well. Moving on to the Big Ten now, Michigan State coming off a lackluster win over Eastern Michigan over the weekend, has a much more formidable opponent this weekend when they host Ohio State. Obviously going to be a very important game in the Big Ten standings for the Spartans, who are looking to win a Legends Division title this year. Bob, basically nobody from the Big Ten has been impressive to this point, according to a lot of people. Do you see this as a big game for Michigan State as far as a statement to beat an Ohio State team that's undefeated right now and has a little bit of momentum going? And who do you have winning this one?
Michigan State doesn't have that signature win yet this year. Boise State was down and depleted. They beat Central. Central, I know, beat Iowa last week, but it's still Central Michigan. They're still looking for that big win. Ohio State comes in on a little bit of a roll. I have a hard time picking Michigan State. I think Ohio State would win, but as a Michigan fan, there's no way I can pick Ohio State, so I'm going with Michigan State in an upset.
Brandon, do you have any logical reasons why you think one team will win over the other this weekend, and who do you got?
Well, logically speaking, you have OSU coming in on a roll, and just as Bob said, you had lackluster wins against Boise. You had a big win, I guess, against Central Michigan. And then last week, I just don't see Michigan State winning. I'm not a Michigan fan, so I can go with OSU, and I will go with OSU with a 10-point spread.
The Big Ten, it's been an arms race all season to see who can be the least impressive on any given Saturday. But I think Michigan State hosting this game against an Ohio State team that looked pretty poor the last couple weekends against a lowly UAB team. It's going to get its first dose of reality against a big-time defense. I think that defense and the home crowd gives Michigan State enough to get by an Ohio State team. I'm going to say by a touchdown. Looking at our final matchup of the week in the NFL ranks, the Detroit Lions will host the Minnesota Vikings this weekend and are hoping that the NFL referees won't screw them out of a win against the Vikings. But looking at this matchup, Minnesota a little bit different than expected, that they are 2-1 coming into this game while the Lions are 1-2. Bob, does this become a more difficult matchup based on what you've seen from Detroit and Minnesota this year, and who do you have winning this weekend?
The Lions are tough to figure out. They beat St. Louis, who they probably should have beat, lost to San Francisco, no shame there. And then you have last week and how they lost, great comeback, losing overtime. They're starting to remind me of the old Lions, finding ways to lose games. I don't know if this is a win or a loss. I'm going to pick them for a loss just based on last week, but I really don't know.
Brandon, after the Lions' defensive performance against the lowly Titans offense last weekend, do you have a lot of confidence in this team heading forward on the defensive side of the ball? And who do you have winning this weekend?
All right, Jake Locker could have stood back there for an hour and passed the ball, especially with the Lions secondary. They had no defensive pressure on him. He threw at will. They rushed at will. Obviously, their special teams was less than desirable. They're finding new ways to lose games, and I guess we can be happy about that. But we won't be happy this week when they lose again.
It's been kind of an interesting Lions team so far. It seems like they fix one issue and then a couple of old ones come out of the woodwork. Last weekend, obviously, with the passing defense, but they were able to get the running game going. I still think that Detroit's a better team than Minnesota, and while it goes against any logic that I've ever had in the past, I'm going to pick the Lions to beat Minnesota by a couple scores this weekend. Moving on to our final segment of the program this week, each of us will give our game balls out to a deserving player from a local high school whose performance played a huge role in their team's success over the weekend. Bob, can you start us off and tell us who your game ball for this week goes to?
My game ball goes out to Reed City's Jordan Straub. He rushed for 129 yards, scored a touchdown on the ground, got one through the air, and he helped Reed City get to 5-0 on the season and still in first place in the CSAA.
Brandon, who stood out to you in this weekend's action, and who does your game ball go to this week?
This week, my game ball goes to the Everett Wildcats offensive line, who helped push through 350 yards on the ground. Good job, boys.
Well, it looks like we've got the offensive line and the skill positions covered, so now we'll go to special teams for my game ball. Eric Boyd, kick returner for Big Rapids, returned not one but 2 kicks for touchdowns, but proved very pivotal in the Cardinals' win over Chippewa Hills last week. Boyd also did a bang-up job in the second half, covering Chippewa Hills receiver Trent Karcher and keeping him under wraps after a big first half. Congratulations to you on a big game, Eric. That's going to do it for this week's edition of the Pioneer Weekly Football Preview. As always, make sure to check out BigRapidsNews.com for more on these games and the weekend edition of the Pioneer.